Lady Evangeline Fairfax's trembling fingers clutched the rough woolen dress that scratched against skin once accustomed to silk, her heart hammering beneath her disguised breast as Duke Adrian Black, Thorne's piercing gray eyes swept across the servants' hall with an intensity that made her breath catch. Shadows from the candlelight danced across his aristocratic features. The sharp line of his jaw, the scar that ran from his left temple to his cheekbone. The way his hands gripped the silver-headed cane he carried not from infirmity but from a riding accident that had nearly claimed his life. In the dim morning light, filtering through the castle's ancient windows, neither the Duke nor the woman who had taken the name, Eva, suspected that their meeting would ignite a passion that would challenge everything they believed about duty, station, and the dangerous secrets that could destroy them both. Eva pressed herself against the stone wall as the Duke of Ravenshallow approached, his tall frame moving with predatory grace through the corridor toward his study. 3 months had passed since she'd fled her father's estate in the dead of night, the accusations of treason still ringing in her ears, the memory of soldiers searching every room for the woman who had supposedly betrayed England's military secrets to French spies. The irony was bitter. She who had risked her life to uncover the real traitor now lived as a servant, scrubbing floors in a castle where her true identity would mean instant death. "You there," the Duke's voice, deep and commanding, stopped her cold. "What's your name?" Eva curtsied deeply, keeping her eyes lowered. "Eva, your grace, I'm the new kitchen maid." Something in his prolonged silence made her risk a glance upward. His gray eyes studied her with an intensity that suggested he saw far more than a simple servant. The morning light revealed the exhaustion etched in his features, dark circles beneath those penetrating eyes, tension in his broad shoulders, the way his scarred hand gripped his cane as though it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. "Look at me," he commanded softly. Eva's pulse quickened, but she obeyed, lifting her chin with a composure that was pure instinct. For a breathless moment, their gazes locked, and she saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or simply surprise at finding intelligence in a maid's eyes. "How long have you been at Ravenshallow?" he asked. 3 months, your grace." Her voice remained steady despite the thundering of her heart. "And before that?" The prepared lie came smoothly. "I worked for a family in Yorkshire, your grace." "They fell on difficult time." Adrian nodded slowly, though something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "You speak well for a kitchen maid." "My mother insisted on proper speech, your grace." This at least was true. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "A wise woman. You may go." As Eva curtsied and moved to leave, she felt his eyes following her retreat. At the corridor's end, she risked a backward glance and found him still watching, his expression unreadable but undeniably intense. That single look sent heat spiraling through her body in a way that terrified her more than any physical danger she'd faced. In the servants' hall, whispers followed Eva like shadows. Mrs. Hartwell, the head housekeeper, was a woman of steel whose sharp eyes missed nothing. She had made it clear from Eva's first day that she suspected something unusual about the newest maid. The way Eva held herself, her refined accent that occasionally slipped through despite her efforts. The fact that her hands, though calloused from recent hard work, showed signs of a gentler past. "The Duke was asking about you," Mrs. Hartwell announced as Eva entered the kitchen that afternoon, her tone carefully neutral. Eva's hands stilled on the copper pot she was scrubbing. "About me, ma'am. Wanted to know where you came from. Who vouched for you?" The housekeeper's eyes were sharp as a hawk's. "I told him Mr. Patterson in the village recommended you. Though I notice Patterson's been remarkably vague about the details of your previous employment." Mr. Patterson, the elderly shopkeeper who had taken pity on a desperate woman fleeing in the night and provided her with both a new identity and a position at the castle, had kept his word about discretion, but Eva knew that even the kindest hearts could be broken by persistent questioning from a duke. "I worked hard for my previous employers," Eva said carefully. "Mr. Patterson knew this and spoke well of my character." "I'm sure he did." Mrs. Hartwell's tone suggested she was sure of no such thing. "Just remember, girl, His Grace has no patience for dishonesty. Those who deceive him find themselves not merely dismissed, but facing far worse consequences." The warning sent a chill down Eva's spine. If the Duke investigated too thoroughly, if he discovered that Lady Evangeline Fairfax wanted for treason, her father's estate seized by the crown was scrubbing his floors. She pushed the thought away. She had survived this long by being invisible, unremarkable. She would continue to do so. That evening, as she cleaned the library, a task she both loved and dreaded for its proximity to the life she'd lost, Eva found herself alone among the thousands of leather-bound volumes. The familiar scent of books and parchment brought tears to her eyes as she remembered her father's library, destroyed now along with everything else she'd held dear. "You read Latin?" Eva spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. The Duke stood in the doorway, still as shadow, his gray eyes fixed on the book she hadn't realized she'd been touching. A volume of Virgil's Aeneid. Your Grace, I was just dusting. The book was open to the passage about Dido's lament, he interrupted, moving into the room with that predatory grace. And you were reading it, not dusting it. Panic clawed at Eva's chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. I learned a little Latin from the parish priest, Your Grace. I sometimes look at the words, though I understand little. Adrian approached until he stood mere feet away, close enough that she could smell the sandalwood soap he used, see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Recite it, he commanded quietly. Your Grace, the passage. If you are reading it, you can recite it. Eva's mind raced. To refuse would be suspicious, but to comply would reveal an education no kitchen maid should possess. Yet something in his eyes, not cruelty, but a strange, almost desperate curiosity, made her decision. Nic me meminus pigabit. Alessa di memma ipsi me dum spiritus hos regit artis, she whispered, the Latin flowing from her lips with the fluency of years of study. Adrian's eyes widened fractionally. Nor shall it ever be irksome to remember Alyssa while I remember myself, while breath governs these limbs, he translated, his voice rough with surprise. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and dangerous revelations. Eva waited for accusations, for demands to know who she really was. Instead, Adrian asked quietly, what happened to your family? The unexpected gentleness in his voice nearly undid her. They died, Your Grace, of fever. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her parents were dead to her now, their memory poisoned by the accusations of treason that had driven her into exile. Adrian seemed to sense the pain beneath her words, for his expression softened. I'm sorry, he said simply. Loss changes us in ways we never expect. Something in his tone suggested personal experience with grief. Eva found herself studying his scarred face, wondering what tragedies had carved those lines of pain around his eyes. Yes, Your Grace, she whispered. It does. For a long moment, they stood in the lamplight among the ancient books, two people carrying secrets too dangerous to share. Then Adrian stepped back, the spell broken. You may continue your work, he said formally, though his eyes remained warm. And Eva, you may come to the library in the evenings after your duties are finished, to dust the books properly. Eva curtsied, not trusting her voice to respond. As she turned to leave, she heard him add quietly, there are few enough people in this world who understand the comfort of books. The words followed her back to the servants' quarters, where she lay awake long into the night, terrified by how much she wanted to return to that library. Not for the books, but for the man who had looked at her as though she were more than a servant, more than the lies she wore like armor. The following weeks brought a dangerous routine. Each evening, after the castle settled into sleep, Eva would slip through the shadows to the library, where she would find the Duke reading by the fire. At first they barely spoke. She would clean quietly while he worked at his correspondence or studied reports from his estates. But gradually, conversation began. What do you make of this? Adrian asked one night, showing her a letter bearing an official seal. My steward writes that the tenants in the northern holdings are requesting lower rents due to poor harvests, but the weather reports suggest adequate rainfall. Eva studied the letter, her mind automatically analyzing the situation with the political acumen her father had trained into her from childhood. Perhaps the issue isn't weather but market access. Your Grace, if the roads to market towns have deteriorated, good harvests mean little if crops can't be sold at fair prices. Adrian's eyebrows rose. An astute observation. Have you experience with agricultural management? Only from listening to conversations. Your Grace, when I served the Yorkshire family. The lie felt heavier each time she told it. Indeed, his tone suggested skepticism, but he made no further comment. Instead, he acted on her suggestion, dispatching engineers to survey the northern roads. When their reports confirmed her hypothesis, his regard for her seemed to deepen further. Such moments became more frequent. Adrian would seek her opinion on estate matters, on political developments discussed in his correspondence, even on books they both read. Eva found herself having to consciously simplify her responses, to hide the breadth of knowledge that came from a lifetime of preparation for the political responsibilities she'd been born to inherit. You have an unusual mind, Adrian observed one evening as they discussed a treatise on economic theory. Most people see only the surface of such matters. Perhaps they simply listen well, Your Grace. No. His gray eyes fixed on her with that intense focus she both craved and feared. You think like someone born to lead, to make decisions that affect thousands of lives. That's not a skill learned through listening. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs. You give me too much credit, Your Grace. Do I? He leaned forward in his chair, and she caught the scent of brandy on his breath, saw the exhaustion that had become his constant companion. Tell me, Eva, if that is indeed your name, what would you do if you discovered that someone you'd come to care for had been deceiving you from the beginning? The question hit her like a physical blow. Did he know? Had he discovered her identity? Eva forced herself to meet his gaze steadily. I would ask myself why they felt deception was necessary. Your Grace. People rarely lie without cause, usually because they're protecting something precious to them. Or someone. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly, a compassionate perspective, though not all would share it. What would you do, Your Grace? His laugh was bitter. I would probably drive them away with my suspicion and anger, as I have driven away most people foolish enough to care for me. The pain in his voice made Eva's chest tighten. Without thinking, she moved closer to his chair. Perhaps those people didn't understand that suspicion often comes from fear of being hurt again. Wise words from a kitchen maid, he said softly. But there was no mockery in his tone. Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected places, Your Grace. Their eyes met and held, and Eva felt the air between them charged with unspoken possibility. Adrian's hand moved as though to touch her face, then stopped, his expression growing pained. You should go, he said roughly. This is not appropriate. Eva stepped back, her cheeks burning. Of course, Your Grace. I apologize if you did nothing wrong. His voice was gentler now. The fault is mine for forgetting the boundaries that must exist between us. As Eva curtsied and moved toward the door, Adrian's voice stopped her. Eva, she turned back. Whatever secrets you carry, he said quietly, they cannot be worse than mine. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and danger. Eva wanted desperately to ask what secrets could burden a duke so deeply, but she merely nodded and slipped away into the darkness of the corridor. In her small chamber, Eva sat by the window and stared out at the moon-washed grounds. The Duke's words echoed in her mind. Whatever secrets you carry, they cannot be worse than mine. What could a man of his position and power possibly be hiding that could compare to her truth, that she was a fugitive, wanted for treason, living under a false name in his very household? The answer came sooner than she expected, delivered in the form of a midnight summons that would shatter the fragile world they had built together. Eva was awakened by urgent knocking at her door. Outside stood Thomas, one of the footmen, his face pale with worry. You're to come at once, he whispered. His Grace, there's been an incident. Fear gripped Eva's heart as she followed Thomas through the castle's dark corridors. They stopped outside Adrian's chambers, where Dr. Whitmore, the local physician, emerged looking grim. How is he? Mrs. Hartwell demanded, her usual stern composure cracked with worry. The nightmares are getting worse, Dr. Whitmore replied quietly. He's been having these episodes since his return from the continent. But tonight he nearly threw himself from the balcony window. Eva's blood turned to ice. Is he physically unharmed? But the doctor shook his head. He's asking for you, Eva. Won't let anyone else near him. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. For a kitchen maid? That's highly irregular. Irregular or not, he's in a dangerous state, Dr. Whitmore said firmly. If he trusts her, she may be our best hope of calming him. Eva's hands trembled as she entered Adrian's chambers. The room was in disarray, furniture overturned, a window thrown open to the cold night air. Adrian sat on the floor in the corner, his dark hair disheveled, his shirt torn, his gray eyes wild with terror. Eva, he breathed when he saw her, relief flooding his features. You came. She approached slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal. I'm here, Your Grace. You're safe. Am I? His laugh was broken, desperate. They were here again. The soldiers. I could hear them screaming, dying because of my orders. Because He broke off, pressing his palms against his temples. Eva knelt beside him, her heart breaking at the pain in his voice. What soldiers, Your Grace? Waterloo, he whispered. I was there, you see, not as a duke playing at war, but as a colonel in Wellington's army. God help me, the things we did. The orders I gave. Understanding crashed over Eva like a cold wave. Adrian's scars, his nightmares, his self-imposed isolation. He was haunted by his service in the war that had ended Napoleon's reign. Her heart clenched with sympathy, even as her mind raced with the implications. You served your country with honor, she said softly, taking his trembling hands in hers. Honor? His gray eyes fixed on hers. Desperate for absolution she wasn't sure she could give. I sent boys to die, Eva. Thousands of them, because someone had to make the impossible choices. And afterward, when the carnage was over and the medals were distributed, I couldn't live with what I'd become. So you came home. I fled home, he corrected bitterly. Like a coward. Let everyone believe I was injured in a riding accident, because the truth that their heroic duke was broken by guilt would have been too shameful to bear. Eva's chest tightened with emotion. Here was the secret he carried, the burden that had driven him into isolation. In that moment, her own deception felt even more poisonous. "You're not a coward," she said firmly. "You're a man who cares so deeply about others that you carry their pain as your own. That's not weakness. It's the rarest kind of strength." Adrian's eyes searched her face as though looking for lies, for the judgment he expected from everyone. Finding none, he slowly relaxed, his breathing becoming less labored. "How do you know what to say?" he asked wonderingly. "How can a kitchen maid understand what physicians and priests cannot?" "Because I've lived with my own guilt," Eva thought, but didn't say. "Because I know what it feels like to be branded a traitor when you were trying to protect the very thing they accuse you of betraying." "Perhaps," she said instead, "it's easier to accept comfort from someone who has no expectations of who you should be." Adrian's hands tightened on hers. "Eva, whatever your real name is, whatever brought you to Ravenshollow, I want you to know that these past weeks have been the first time since Waterloo that I've felt human again." Tears pricked Eva's eyes. "Your Grace, Adrian," he corrected softly. "When we're alone, I want to hear my name from your lips, not my title." The intimacy of the request sent warmth flooding through her. "Adrian," she whispered, and saw something light up in his eye. They sat together on the floor of his chambers until dawn, her hands in his, talking quietly about books and philosophy and the weight of secrets that could crush a soul. When the morning light finally crept through the windows, Adrian was calm, his nightmares banished by her presence. "I should go," Eva said reluctantly as the sounds of the waking castle began to drift through the walls. "Stay," Adrian said urgently, then caught himself. I would like you to take breakfast with me. Here, in my chambers." The request was shocking in its impropriety. A duke breakfasting alone with a maid in his private rooms. Eva knew she should refuse, should remember the boundaries between their stations. Instead, she found herself nodding. "I would like that, Adrian." His smile, rare and brilliant, made her heart soar even as her conscience whispered warnings about the deception that lay between them like a chasm, waiting to swallow them both. The breakfast was simple: bread, fruit, tea. But it felt more intimate than any elaborate feast. They talked about everything except the night's revelations, both of them clinging to this moment of normalcy. Eva found herself laughing at Adrian's dry observations about his estate managers, while he seemed fascinated by her insights into the servants' perspectives on household management. "You should have been born to different circumstances," Adrian said suddenly, his gray eyes serious. "Your mind, your grace, your understanding of complex matters. You were meant for more than scrubbing floors." Eva's stomach clenched. If only he knew how right he was, and how impossible her true circumstances made any future between them. "Perhaps we all find ourselves in circumstances we never expected," she replied carefully. "Perhaps we do." His gaze lingered on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Eva, there's something I need to tell you." Before he could continue, urgent knocking sounded at the chamber door. Adrian's face darkened with annoyance as he called, "Enter." Thomas burst in, his face pale with alarm. "Your Grace, forgive the intrusion, but there are soldiers at the gates, king's men, with warrants. They're searching for someone, a fugitive wanted for treason." Eva's blood turned to ice. Her hand moved instinctively to her throat, where her fingers found the delicate chain she wore beneath her dress, the only remaining link to her true identity. "What fugitive?" Adrian demanded, rising to his feet. "Lady Evangeline Fairfax, Your Grace, daughter of the late Earl of Whitmore. They say she betrayed military secrets to French agents, caused the deaths of British soldiers. There's a reward of £1,000 for information leading to her capture." Adrian's eyes sharpened, and Eva felt his gaze move to her face. She tried to school her expression into mild curiosity, but she knew the color had drained from her cheeks, knew her hands were trembling where they clutched her skirts. "Describe this woman," Adrian said quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Dark hair, brown eyes, about 23 years of age," Thomas recited. "Well-educated, speaks several languages. They say she might be disguised as a servant or common woman." The silence that followed was deafening. Eva could feel Adrian's eyes boring into her, could practically hear his brilliant mind putting the pieces together. When she finally met his gaze, she saw knowledge there, and something that might have been betrayal. "I see," Adrian said coldly. "Thomas, show the soldiers to the Great Hall. Tell them I'll speak with them shortly." "Yes, Your Grace." Thomas bowed and departed, leaving Eva alone with a man whose expression had transformed from warmth to icy fury. "Lady Evangeline Fairfax, Adrian said softly, each word precisely enunciated. The trader's daughter, who sold her country's secrets for French gold. Eva lifted her chin, finding courage in desperation. That's what they say. And what do you say, my lady? The title, spoken with cutting sarcasm, made her flinch. I say that sometimes the truth is more complex than the stories told about it. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Complex. How refreshingly honest of you to admit that much. He moved closer, and Eva forced herself not to retreat. Tell me, was any of it real? The shy maid, the gentle touches during my nightmares, the way you looked at me as though I mattered. All of it was real, Eva said fiercely. My feelings for you, my care for your pain, none of that was a lie. But everything else was. His gray eyes were ice cold now. Your name, your history, your very presence in my home. You've been playing me for a fool while soldiers died because of information you sold to the enemy. That's not true. The words burst from her with desperate force. I never betrayed anyone. I was investigating the real traitor when I was discovered and framed for his crimes. How convenient. The guilty party always claims innocence. Eva's temper flared. And the righteous always assume guilt. You know me, Adrian. You've seen into my heart, my mind. Do you truly believe I could orchestrate the deaths of innocent men? For a moment something flickered in his expression, doubt perhaps, or remembered affection. But it was quickly suppressed. I don't know what to believe anymore, he said harshly. For all I know, your presence here, your attention to my nightmares, even this conversation, it could all be part of some elaborate scheme. The accusation hit Eva like a physical blow. You think I seduced you for political gain? That night, my feelings were calculated. Weren't they? Eva stared at him, seeing the pain beneath his anger, understanding that her deception had cut him deeper than any war wound. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but steady. I came to Raven's Hollow to hide. Yes, I took the identity of Eva the kitchen maid, because the alternative was death. But I never planned to care for you, never expected to find in you a man whose strength and vulnerability called to something deep in my soul. She stepped closer, ignoring the way he tensed. I never planned to fall in love with you, Adrian. That was real. That is real, regardless of what you choose to believe. Adrian's facade cracked slightly. Love, he repeated softly. You speak of love while lying about your very identity. I lied about my name and my past, Eva said desperately. I never lied about my feelings, and I never betrayed my country. I was trying to save it when I was discovered and accused of the very crimes I was investigating. Prove it. Eva's heart sank. I can't. The evidence I gathered was destroyed when I fled. The real traitor saw to that. How remarkably convenient. Adrian, please. Your Grace, he corrected coldly. Whatever intimacy existed between us died with your honesty. Before Eva could respond, another knock sounded at the door. This time, it was Mrs. Hartwell, her face grim with satisfaction. Your Grace, she said, curtsying deeply. The soldiers are asking to search the servants' quarters. I thought you should know that one of them claims to recognize our Eva from the description of the wanted woman. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked desperately at Adrian, searching for any sign of the man who had held her hands through his nightmares, who had shared breakfast and intimate conversation just moments before. I see, Adrian said, his voice betraying nothing of his thoughts. Thank you, Mrs. Hartwell. Please inform the soldiers that I'll join them presently. After the housekeeper left, silence stretched between them like a battlefield. Eva knew this was her last chance, her final moment to reach the man she loved before he disappeared behind the Duke's formal mask forever. Adrian, she whispered, I know you're hurt and angry. I know my deception has broken your trust. But before you hand me over to those soldiers, I need you to know something. He waited, his expression carved from stone. The man who held me through the nightmares, who trusted me with his deepest secrets, who looked at me as though I were precious. That man knows my heart. Not Lady Evangeline's heart, not Eva the maid's heart, but the heart of the woman who stands before you now. That woman loves you more than her own life, and she would rather die than see you hurt. Adrian's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Eva reached behind her neck and unclasped the delicate chain she wore, revealing a small locket that bore the Fairfax coat of arms. She placed it on the table between them. This is all I have left of my former life, she said softly. I've kept it not out of pride, but because it reminds me of who I used to be, and who I chose to become when I met you. She met his eyes one last time. I chose to become a woman worthy of your love, Adrian. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. With that, she moved toward the door, her head held high despite the tears threatening to fall. As her hand touched the handle, Adrian's voice stopped her. Where will you go? Eva didn't turn around. Does it matter? Once those soldiers see me, I'll be bound for London and the Tower. My fate was sealed the moment I chose to trust you with my heart. Eva! The name was spoken so softly she almost didn't hear it. She turned back, hope flaring in her chest. Adrian stood by the window, his profile etched against the morning light, the locket gleaming in his hand. Was there ever a moment when you wanted to tell me the truth? Every moment, she whispered. But I was a coward. I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, you'd see only the accused traitor and not the woman who loves you. Adrian was quiet for a long time, studying the locket. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. The soldiers are waiting. Eva nodded, her heart breaking. I know, and they have warrants. Yes. Adrian turned to face her, and Eva was startled to see not anger in his eyes, but something else, determination, perhaps even resolve. Then we'd better make sure they don't find what they're looking for. Eva's breath caught. Adrian, what are you saying? He moved to his wardrobe and withdrew a heavy traveling cloak. I'm saying that Lady Evangeline Fairfax died months ago, somewhere on the road between Yorkshire and here. Eva the kitchen maid, however. He approached her with the cloak. Eva has proven herself to be a woman of remarkable courage and intelligence. A woman who understands the weight of impossible choices and the price of doing what's right rather than what's safe. Eva stared at him in shock. You believe me? I believe the woman who held my hands through the darkest night of my soul wouldn't betray innocent soldiers to their deaths. Adrian fastened the cloak around her shoulders, his fingers gentle at her throat. I believe the woman who looked at me with love, instead of pity or fear, is incapable of the treachery she's accused of. Tears spilled down Eva's cheeks. But the soldiers will be told that the woman they seek was spotted heading north towards Scotland. By the time they realize the information is false, you'll be safely away. Away where? Adrian's hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I have properties in Ireland, beyond the reach of English warrants, friends who owe me favors and ask no questions. You'll be safe there while I work to uncover the truth about what really happened. Eva's heart soared even as her mind reeled with the implications. You would do that for me. Risk your position, your reputation. I would do far more than that, Adrian said softly. I love you, Eva. Not Lady Evangeline, not the kitchen maid, but you, the woman brave enough to remake herself in the face of impossible circumstances, wise enough to see through a broken soldier's defenses to the man beneath. Eva threw her arms around his neck, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that tasted of desperation and hope and love, too powerful to be contained by the conventions that sought to divide them. When they finally broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. We have to move quickly. Thomas is loyal, but some of the other servants may not be. Can you be ready to leave within the hour? I've been ready to run for months, Eva said with a shaky laugh. But Adrian, what about you? If they discover you helped me escape, they won't, he said with quiet confidence. I'll tell them I questioned you myself and found you to be nothing more than a simple kitchen maid with no connection to Lady Evangeline Fairfax. My word carries considerable weight. And afterward, will you come to Ireland? Adrian's smile was soft but determined. My dear Eva, did you think I would let you face exile alone? I've spent 6 years hiding from life, letting guilt and fear make a coward of me. You've shown me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love despite it. Eva's heart filled to overflowing. The Duke abandoning his duties for a fugitive. Society will be scandalized. Let them be. I've discovered something more valuable than society's approval. Adrian's eyes were warm as summer sky as he looked at her. I've discovered that sometimes the greatest duty is to one's own heart. The sound of soldiers' voices echoing through the castle corridors reminded them of the urgency of their situation. Adrian moved to his desk and withdrew a leather portfolio. These are papers establishing your new identity. Eva Blackthorne, my distant cousin from the Americas, recently widowed and traveling under my protection. The story will hold up to casual scrutiny. Eva stared at the documents, amazed by his thoroughness. You had these prepared? I've suspected your true identity for weeks, Adrian admitted. Your education, your manner of speaking, the way you handled estate matters. It was clear you'd been born to higher station. When the soldiers arrived with their description, it merely confirmed what I'd already deduced. Yet you were still angry when you confronted me. Adrian's expression grew pained. I was hurt that you hadn't trusted me with the truth. But Eva, after watching you these past months, after seeing your compassion and strength, I could never believe you capable of treason. Your very presence in my household, working as a servant rather than seeking political advantage through your noble connections, proved your innocence more than any testimony could. The wisdom of his observation struck her like lightning. A guilty woman would have leveraged her nobility for protection or gain, not hidden it beneath the grueling work of a kitchen maid. Thomas will escort you to the stable through the servants' passages. Adrian continued, moving to a window that overlooked the courtyard where soldiers milled about. My fastest horse is saddled and waiting, along with supplies for the journey. Ride hard for Portsmouth. My ship, the Morning Star, will be waiting to take you to Ireland. What will you tell the soldiers about Eva, the kitchen maid's sudden disappearance? That she left in fear after hearing about the manhunt for Lady Evangeline. A perfectly reasonable reaction for an innocent servant who happened to match the fugitive's description. Eva marveled at his quick thinking, his ability to construct a believable narrative on such short notice. This was the strategic mind that had served Wellington at Waterloo, now turned to protecting the woman he loved. A soft knock at the door announced Thomas's return. Your Grace, the coast is clear, but we must hurry. The soldiers are starting to question the other servants. Adrian pulled Eva close one last time, his kiss fierce and urgent. Be safe, he whispered against her lips. Wait for me in Ireland. I'll join you as soon as I can arrange my affairs here. I love you, Eva whispered back, pouring all her heart into the words. And I love you, more than duty, more than honor, more than life itself. With Thomas leading the way, Eva slipped through the servants' passages of Raven's Hollow for the last time. At the stable, a groom waited with a magnificent bay mare, her saddle fitted with provisions for a long journey. Godspeed, my lady, Thomas whispered as he helped her mount. His Grace gave strict orders. You're to trust no one but Captain Morrison aboard the Morning Star. Eva nodded, then urged the mare toward the gates. As they cleared the castle grounds, she looked back once at the ancient towers that had been her refuge and her prison, her sanctuary and her crucible. Somewhere within those walls, Adrian was facing the soldiers, weaving a tale of deception to protect her. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who had suffered such guilt over wartime necessities was now lying with magnificent skill to save the woman he loved. Perhaps they were both learning that sometimes survival required actions that honor alone couldn't guide. The ride to Portsmouth took 2 days of hard traveling, during which Eva pushed both herself and the mare to their limits. At every inn, every crossroads, she expected to see soldiers pursuing her, but Adrian's misdirection held the manhunt had turned north toward Scotland, leaving her path to the sea clear. The Morning Star proved to be a sleek merchant vessel, flying Adrian's personal flag. Captain Morrison, a weathered man with kind eyes, greeted her formally as Miss Blackthorne, and showed her to a well-appointed cabin. His Grace's orders were explicit, the captain said as they set sail on the evening tide. You're to be taken directly to his estate in County Cork, where his steward will see to your comfort and safety. As England's coastline faded into the morning mist, Eva felt the weight of her old life slipping away. Lady Evangeline Fairfax, accused traitor daughter of a disgraced earl, was truly dead now. In her place stood Eva Blackthorne, beloved of a duke who had chosen love over convention, hope over fear. The Irish estate, when she reached it 3 days later, proved to be a sprawling manor house, set among rolling green hills that seemed to stretch to the edge of the world. Mrs. O'Brien, the housekeeper, welcomed her warmly, and Eva understood that Adrian's instructions had been both comprehensive and tactful. You'll be wanting to rest after your journey, the kindly woman said, showing Eva to a beautiful suite of rooms, overlooking gardens that rivaled those at Raven's Hollow. His Grace sent word that you're to have anything you need, and that we're to expect him within the month. That month felt like both an eternity and a heartbeat. Eva threw herself into reading the extensive library, helping with the estate's management, and trying not to count each day that passed without word from Adrian. She knew he would need time to arrange his affairs, to create a plausible explanation for his sudden departure from England. But as weeks passed, fear began to creep in. What if he had been discovered? What if his plan had failed? The answer came on a golden autumn morning, when Eva looked out her window to see a familiar figure riding up the drive. Her heart leaped as she recognized Adrian's tall form, his dark hair catching the sunlight, his seat in the saddle as elegant as ever. She ran through the manor house, propriety forgotten, and met him in the entrance hall, where he swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed and cried simultaneously. I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind, she gasped, when he finally set her down. Never, Adrian said fiercely, his hands framing her face. Though the arrangements took longer than expected, I had to be very careful to avoid suspicion. And the soldiers? Did they accept your story? Adrian's smile was grimly satisfied. They spent 2 weeks chasing shadows in Scotland before giving up the search. Lady Evangeline Fairfax has officially vanished without a trace, and the Duke of Ravenshollow has decided that his health requires an extended stay in Ireland, Adrian replied, pulling her close. Indefinitely extended, as it happens. Eva studied his face, seeing peace there instead of the haunted expression that had marked him for so long. No regrets about abandoning your duties in England. My only regret is the years I wasted hiding from life. Adrian's voice was soft but certain. I've arranged for my steward to manage the English estates. The tenants will be better served by someone who isn't constantly battling nightmare. And what will you do here? Adrian's arms tightened around her. I'll love you if you'll have me. We'll build a life together, away from the shadows of our pasts. And perhaps, he hesitated, but then continued with growing confidence. Perhaps I'll write. There are stories that need telling about the true cost of war, about the men who carry its burdens long after the battle's end. Eva's heart filled with pride and love. I think that's exactly what you should do. And Adrian, I have news of my own. Something in her tone made him pull back to study her face. What news? Captain Morrison brought word from one of your London contacts. It seems there's been a development in the Fairfax case. Eva's eyes sparkled with vindication. A dying confession from a French agent captured in Dover. He admitted to bribing a clerk in the War Office to steal military secrets, then arranging for Lady Evangeline to be blamed when she got too close to uncovering the truth. Adrian's eyes widened. Your name has been cleared? Completely. The real traitor was a minor official named Henderson who sold information for gambling debts. He fled to France when the investigation began. Adrian lifted her off her feet again, spinning her in a circle, as joy and relief flooded his features. Eva, this is wonderful news. You can return to England, reclaim your title, your father's estate. I can, Eva interrupted gently, but I won't. Lady Evangeline's vindication brings me peace, but her life belongs to the past. My future is here, with you, as Eva Blackthorne. Adrian set her down, his expression suddenly uncertain. Are you certain? You'd be giving up so much. Eva silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her love and certainty into the connection between them. When they parted, she smiled up at the man who had saved her in every way that mattered. I'm not giving up anything, she said firmly. I'm choosing everything that matters. Love over duty, happiness over obligation. The man who saw my heart over the society that judged my name. Adrian's smile was radiant as he dropped to one knee, pulling a ring from his pocket, not an ostentatious symbol of wealth, but a simple band set with stones the color of her eyes. Then Eva Blackthorne, he said softly, will you marry me? Not because of your birth or mine, but because we found in each other the missing pieces of our souls. Yes, Eva whispered, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks. Yes, Adrian, with all my heart, as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Eva marveled at the journey that had brought them here. She had fled England as a broken fugitive, lost everything she thought mattered, and discovered that sometimes destruction was simply preparation for a more authentic life. They were married a month later in the small church on Adrian's estate, with only the Irish staff as witnesses. Mrs. O'Brien wept openly as Eva spoke her vows in a simple dress of cream silk, her happiness more radiant than any crown jewels could have made her. That evening, as they walked through the gardens under a canopy of stars, Adrian stopped beside a fountain, whose gentle music blended with their quiet laughter. Do you miss it? He asked softly. The life you left behind? Eva considered the question seriously, then shook her head. I miss the father I thought I knew before the scandal broke. I miss the innocence of believing that honor was simple and justice was certain. But the life itself, no. She turned in his arms, her face glowing in the moonlight. I was drowning in that life, suffocating under expectations and traditions that had nothing to do with who I really was. You didn't just save me from execution. Adrian, you saved me from living a lie, as you saved me from my ghosts. We saved each other, Eva corrected, reaching up to trace the scar along his jaw. And we chose each other, despite every reason society would give us not to. Adrian caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. What do you think our children will make of this story someday? How their parents fell in love across the barriers of class and circumstance. Eva's heart fluttered at the mention of children, at the future stretching bright and possible before them. I think they'll understand that love isn't about stations or titles, or the approval of society. I think they'll know that sometimes the greatest courage is in choosing your own path, even when the world tells you it's impossible. Wise words from a former kitchen maid, Adrian said with a gentle teasing that had become one of her greatest joys. Wiser words from a duke who learned that happiness matters more than duty, Eva replied, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted of new beginnings and endless possibility. Above them, the Irish stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing silent witness to two souls who had found in each other not just love, but the courage to become who they were always meant to be. The wealthy duke and the maid with secrets had discovered that sometimes the greatest treasure isn't hidden in vaults or titles, but in the simple revolutionary act of seeing someone's true heart and choosing to love it without reservation. In the months and years that followed, their love story would become legend among the Irish countryside. The tale of the English duke who gave up everything for love, and the mysterious lady who had transformed from servant to duchess through the alchemy of genuine affection. But they themselves knew the truth was simpler. and more profound. They had found in each other the home they had been searching for all their lives. And in choosing each other, they had chosen to write their own definitions of honor, duty, and happiness. Their story proved that sometimes the most beautiful endings come disguised as impossible beginnings, and that love, when it is true and brave and willing to sacrifice convention for authenticity, can indeed conquer all.